The new president of Argentina, he's a bit of a firebrand. He's a bit of a joke hairstyle, we have to say, but what he talks about is not a joke. His name is Javier Milei, and he has vowed to take the Falkland Islands back.
Yes, garnering nationalist support over a deeply rooted colonial issue. But is it what those living in the Falkland Islands want? And are they capable of sending a force to the Falklands today? Well, let's speak to someone who knows quite a lot about this issue. This is Falklands War veteran Simon Weston. Very good to see you this morning, Simon. I wanted to start by asking you how this sort of rhetoric makes you feel when you think of yourself, who was wounded in the Falklands, and those who fell alongside you.
Well, it's very much a case of same old, really. Every new leader that comes into Argentina says the same thing. The Argentinians and the politicians there have got to realise that their corruption and denying their military, of any funding to keep improving, to keep upgrading, has degraded their ability to do anything. So saying he's not going to go and do any military action is pretty much a misleading thing, because they couldn't anyway. They don't have an air force. They've got about 4 serviceable fighter aircraft. Their army and their navy is very much downgraded. A bit like Russia and Ukraine, really. I mean, Russia robbed all the money out of their Ministry of Defense, and the Argentinians did the same thing because they didn't want to have another junta. They didn't want to have a military come in and kick all the corrupt politicians out, so ending their gravy train. Fernandez de Kirchner, she did the same thing, and her husband previously to her. But the sabre rattling is very unsettling for the islanders, and that's the biggest problem. And they have to live with this continuous threat that the Argentine and the bigger country is going on about. But their claim bears no credence whatsoever. You know, they say they occupied the islands, and well, they were never kicked out. There was never a war to kick them out, apart from when they illegally invaded. You know, the British have been there for over 250 years, before Argentina was ever a country. So how can they lay claim to it?
Well, Simon, if you talked about the decrepit military force that the Argentinians have, but what about the British presence in the Falklands now? Have we upped our game there?
Well, we certainly have better aircraft than they've got. We certainly have better trained pilots at the moment than they've got. And we certainly have a larger force than we had back in '82. So for them to come across with antiquated ships that really couldn't stand up to the one ship we have down there, they certainly couldn't withstand the force of the 6 or 8 fighter jets that we have based down there. And the 1,500 to 2,000 soldiers we've got down there. I think they would have a much more difficult time of trying to invade than they did back in '82. And we have greater systems now as well, spy satellites and such like, to know when they launch anything. So I don't think that's ever the case. But what we've got here is a guy, and some of the things he said, I mean, I don't find too unreasonable. But what baffles me is they've continuously got this cabal of nations from South America to come together to try to put pressure on the UN and everything else. And then they base all their argument on geography. Well, if geography was the sole arbiter of ownership of anything, then there's a huge amount of reshuffling of world geography, because a lot of nations would have to hand over properties and lands that they've occupied for many centuries. So I think that there's a huge amount of bluff. This is watch the right hand, because the left hand is doing a double deal. You know, he's playing the magician act here. There's huge problems there, and I think he's got to sort out his economy. They've got raging inflation in that country. You know, he keeps drawing odd lines to try to sort of find some reason for what he's saying. You know, he says China and Hong Kong. But crikey, does he not know that Britain only leased Hong Kong from China? And what they did then, they waited till we built up a brilliant banking system, and then they took it all back. But they ended the lease, and that was done peacefully and amicably. But this guy, I think a lot of it's populist, and he's trying to say things just to get people riled up and to be on his side, and that's worked for him. But I think he does need to check his facts and check his reality, because it wouldn't go well for them if they did try to do anything now physically. What will happen politically? Well, maybe he'll be a strong leader, and let's be honest about it, the world is desperately in need of decent, strong political leadership at the moment, and we're seeing scarce proof of that is capable anyway. I mean, you only got to look at America.
And Simon, do you think this is anything more than rhetoric, or do you think, as you say, it's just populism and hearing what the people, saying what the people want to hear? They've got inflation running at 140%, interest rates over 130%. Is this just a good distraction for the people of Argentina?
I think so. You know, sometimes you need to, like I say, it's the magician's game, isn't it? Stop looking at our economy, stop looking at the problems we've got at home, we'll go abroad. And that's been a political stance that's been used by so many for so long. You know, and that should be stopped in many ways, because you have to deal with your own domestic problems and issues first before you start thinking about other things. You know, and if you're going to help others, that's one thing. But to go and try and bully everybody else to your way of thinking, which is largely what Mr. Putin has done, you know, you just can't continue to lead a political party like that. You can't lead a country like that. And you need to check where you go with these attitudes, because people's lives are at stake.
Of course they are.
And their comfort.
Simon, we've got to leave it there. Good listening to you again. Always good to hear from you. And thank you very much indeed for everybody who's got in touch with me, backing up what Simon Weston is saying there, and just basically telling Argentina to keep their nose out of the Falklands.
Yeah, so many emails coming through, so do keep them coming in. gbviews@gbnews.com.